Let's get to one of our top stories now, other than the Erin Patterson sentencing, and that is the tete-a-tete within the Liberal Party at the moment. This has been going on for a week now. Jacinta Price and Alex Hawke bickering in quite a public way. Now I want to bring in Alex Hawke. He joins me at the desk. Alex, uncomfortable, I know. What's happened over the last week? Explain, please.
Well, look, I think the Liberal Party is actually quite united about the original comments that Senator Price made. And she said, you know, they were a mistake and they were wrong, and she's walked them back. And so actually my colleagues, party members, you know, people across the country understand that if we're going to have a debate about migration numbers, that's fine. But we don't single out communities, and we certainly don't target the Australian Indian community because they're excellent migrants. They're our number one source country for migrants for the last 20 years of all governments. And they've been really great at integrating into Australia. So I think we've come to that view that this is just about the overall number of migrants.
Is that a unanimous view?
Yeah, it is, within the Liberal Party, no question about it.
OK, well, what was Jacinta Price doing then? Freelancing?
Look, she made a mistake, and I think she's acknowledged those comments were a mistake now, and she's walked it back. We had a disagreement. You know, publicly she said I was cowardly to raise it with her directly, but I raised it with her directly. But I am happy to say it publicly too. I'm not afraid of that. And that is stand up for the Western Sydney community, the diasporas from India, South Asia, all been fantastic migrants to this country, really great people and really integrated really well. And just say, look, all I said to Jacinta was, would you consider apologising to the community for making a mistake about the remarks?
Did you say it in that way, or was it perhaps a bit more heated at the time?
No, pretty calm with her and I. You know,
but what about the staff? Because that seemed to have been the issue, that you somehow berated her staff because you weren't able to contact her.
She did raise that with me, and she was upset that I hadn't called her direct, but I called her office and asked to speak to her, and I might have had a 1 to 2 minute conversation with her staff, and I advised her that if she was told that was angry, that wasn't correct, I was ringing to offer help.
So you spoke to this staff member?
About 1 to 2 minutes, yeah.
Right. And what's the misreporting in that it wasn't...
well, she got a version of our conversation that I'd said, look, I told her, I said, that's not what happened. I simply asked for you and, you know, could we get some video from you to share on social media? Because the way to minimise this was to apologise quickly and
So
get it
were
out
you
there.
doing that just in what capacity? You know, did you discuss this with other Liberal Party colleagues and said, well, you know what, I'll call Jacinta and ask her to do that because this has done a lot of damage?
Yeah, look, that morning, you've got to remember this was just the morning after the comments. A lot of the metropolitan members with high Indian populations, my community's got them. I've been a former multicultural affairs minister. I'd heard from interstate multicultural leaders. Yeah, there was a lot of criticism building. And I knew on Thursday that the Labor Party would try and weaponise the comments that Jacinta had made the night before. And that was the point I made to her office. So, look, I explained that to her immediately, and I didn't berate anybody, and I have no, you know, I rang somebody at random and said, can I speak to your boss? However, what I was concerned about when we did catch up, and what I think is important to understand here is, look, I was of the view an apology would fix this. I was of the view that an apology would fix it quickly because she didn't mean it. I said to her, I don't think you're a racist person.
She's not apologising. She's just vowed really not to repeat it.
She disagreed with me, and she has disagreed with me, but I've looked at the damage in the community, and there is real damage now on both sides.
Well, what do you want her to do? Price?
I think it would be good for her now, now that she's raised this issue publicly, that she should think about the advice I've given her. On the way in here, I had her supporters emailing me saying, essentially words to the effect of there's too many Indian people coming to the country. That's bad. She needs to address that. And then I've got members of the Liberal Party, some from Southeast Asian communities and Indian communities saying we really feel hurt. So the damage is ongoing. So I think if an apology was offered early on and just a quick walk back, that would have helped. But there's still time, and I think the community should hear from her because I've heard from her and I believe her. She didn't mean these comments. She wasn't being racist. But it came out that way.
The social media posts seem to suggest that you were bullying women. Did she express that to you in the conversation?
No, this is not a gendered issue at all.
Are you targeting women?
No, well, I can't understand how this is a gendered issue.
Are you surprised that Jacinta Price would say that, given her...
Well, I don't know what she means. She didn't say I was bullying. She hasn't used that word. She raised a gender issue, but no, I haven't raised any gender issue in relation to this. I've raised the immigration issue and I've raised the race issue. And I can't see how it has a gender perspective. I'm not making that point at all.
Does this say everything about the Liberal Party at the moment, that instead of focusing on how difficult it is to claw back those votes, not only in teal seats, not only in the votes you've lost to the Labor Party, in those migrant communities, instead we're focusing on two big personalities, and you and Jacinta Price? Doesn't that say everything we need to know?
Oh, I don't mind. This is public discourse. Jacinta made some comments. They were wrong. She admitted they were wrong. She's walked them back. Now it's incumbent on us to say to the community, which we are saying, well, and I'm making it very clear as a former Multicultural Affairs Minister and an Immigration Minister, communities change their votes all the time and people change their votes individually. So if people vote more Labor at one election, they vote more Liberal at other elections. Last election was a very bad result for us. So the idea that the Indian community voted in strong numbers for Labor is only a guess.
Well, they did. Cosmara says it's about 85%.
Well, he says
right?
that. But look, I can tell you that's wrong in many parts of the country. And most communities voted for record numbers for Labor this time because we had our worst ever result. So why single out one community? You
must be really worried that Jacinta Price's comments are going to have this really deep effect on how migrant communities, particularly the Indian community, view the Liberal Party. And that does have an effect at the next election.
Look, I'm hearing that from a lot of leaders, a lot of people. I think the way forward is just a simple apology and a more clarification. I know Jacinta didn't mean it, and I know she's not racist. She was purely trying to make a point about migration numbers overall. And in doing so, she made a mistake, and she said that.
What did you mean when you said to, I think it was the staffer, you'll go the way of another Liberal senator?
No, I've never said that, so I don't understand that.
So you weren't referring to Jane Hume?
No. So, look, Jane isn't involved in this, and I wouldn't drag her into it. I've spoken to her this morning, so she's not involved in it.
Okay. But did you make that inference to Jacinta?
Well, look,
if she didn't apologise, it might affect her political career?
No, so I didn't make that point at all. Okay. I was only speaking about her comments and, certainly parallels with other comments, but I'm not going to go into blow by blow about the account because, quite rightly, when we spoke as colleagues, she said a lot of things that I wouldn't report and I wouldn't have expected to be reported either. I had the guts to ring her and say, I think we've got a problem and I think you should apologise to the community. And then she's outed an interpretation of one thing I've said. But
so you didn't mention Jane at all by name or even infer to her?
Well, like I said, I'm not going to go into what I discussed back and forth.
Sounds like a yes, Alex.
Well, but I'm not going to say because, she said a lot of things and I said a lot of things and they're not for publication. Okay. I'm only addressing the parts that she asked me to publicly, which is, did I call for her to apologise? Yes, I did.
And you're still asking her to do that?
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth her considering it. And because the harm is still out there and it's ongoing, and like I said, even on the way here, I'm getting people on the other side saying, not on the numbers, but focusing on the Indian community.
Yeah.
After those flyers we saw before the anti-immigration rallies, which singled out the Indian community, this was a particularly bad week for these comments. And so she's walked them back. I appreciate that. I don't believe she meant them. I absolutely believe Jacinta Price. I think now it'd be good to look at the initial advice I gave her, which was to offer an apology to the community and move on.
Is this a kind of typical green on blue attack at moderates and conservatives? I don't know.
Well, look, green on blue is interesting. She's just joined the Liberal Party and she's been welcomed with open arms. I worked closely with her in the Voice campaign and when we brought 1,000 people to the Blacktown Workers, we brought quite a contingent of the Indian community and they were very receptive to hear from her, and listen to the message that she had. So she knows that. She doesn't have any of these instincts, but we've got to get this cleared up.
Okay. Alex, hopefully we can get you and her on the other side of the desk. That would be nice.
That'd be fantastic. You'd have fun.
I would. Really appreciate your time today. Hopefully we can speak to Jacinta as well.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Laura.